Hi, I'm a photographer and this is Inside Motorsport. In this episode, I'll take you behind the scenes of Hamilton's first laps in Ferrari, taken at Fiorano on January 22nd. Before diving into the day itself, here's a bit of context. On February 1st, 2024, it was officially announced that Lewis Hamilton will become a Ferrari driver starting in 2025, replacing Carlos Sainz. After several months of growing hype, the British driver made his first appearance in Maranello on January 20th. During that day, he took part in simulator sessions and technical meetings to get familiar with the environment and the team staff. On January 21st, Hamilton continued his integration process at Ferrari, visiting different departments and meeting all the team members. But the most anticipated day for all the fans was January 22nd, as according to various rumors, Lewis was expected to take his first Ferrari test on that morning. In fact, on that historical day, under cold and foggy weather, the seven-time world champion tested the SF-23. The only place where it was possible to clearly see him was the overpass on the main bypass road. It gave us a great view of Turn 1 and, further in the distance, of other sections of the circuit, like Turn 3 or Turn 6. Even if it was pretty early, once we got there, around 8 a.m., it was already full of people. The front row was completely packed, and apparently some of them had arrived as early as 5 in the morning. When we got there, we found a spot roughly halfway across the bridge. In the first hour, it was all a matter of waiting. During that time, the place became completely full. So many people came from every part of the country to witness that historical moment. The first person I noticed was this guy, sitting on the guardrail and waving a Ferrari flag, driven by a great passion for the Scuderia. There were also many TV crews there. For example, Ismar San Giorgio from Sky Italia, showing someone Hamilton's new helmet, whose photos were published during that hour. I spotted also Davide Camicioli for Sky Italia, and understood that Sky UK and Sky Germany were present as well. At a certain point, the fog reduced and really quickly, so much that we caught sight of the Ferrari garage appearing from the horizon. A couple of seconds later, we suddenly heard the roar of an engine. On 9:16 a.m. of the 22nd of January 2025, Lewis Hamilton went on track for the first time ever with a Ferrari F1 car. And it was a surprise for everyone there. In fact, no one was expecting his first laps on that moment. I managed to take this picture on that moment. When I read the number 44 through my camera lens, I got goosebumps. In that moment I realized that I was witnessing history. It was a day destined to be remembered for generations to come. Lewis came back to the pits at the end of the lap. He completed it with a full wet compound. The tyre choice wasn't based on the actual track conditions. The goal for the world champion was not to push the car to the limit, but just to understand the new equipment. Just a simple installation lap. While he was in the pits, I pointed my photo lens to the garage, hoping to detect any significant movement through the zoom. Lewis rejoined the action at 9:30, after a stop of around 12 minutes. This time he made a lot more laps, wearing hard tires. We guessed that it could have been a C3 compound, because those were the white ones at the last F1 Grand Prix held at the time, the Abu Dhabi one. Lewis came back to the pits at 9:43, after a stint that turned out to be the longest of the day. I suppose he made 11 or 12 laps, as each of them take around 1 minute to be completed. Also, the British driver made a practice start from the main straight. That's an important test, because Ferrari and Mercedes have different clutch systems. After it, the number 44 completed the lap entering the garage. This second break has been a lot longer than the previous one, probably because Hamilton and the team analyzed all the information obtained from that first stint. At 10:28, after almost 1 hour, Hamilton went back onto the track. He had still the hard tires on. He maintained that compound for the rest of the day. At the start of it, I captured this shot, which is my favorite of the day with him in the car. His third stint had been shorter. Lewis came back to the pits at the end of the fourth lap, after a small mistake at turn 6. This corner is a low-speed hairpin, and it proved to be the most challenging for him, as he made his main mistakes in that point. The third break didn't last long. In fact, he went out of the garage after just a few minutes. His fourth stint has been the second longest, as he drove around 10 or 11 laps, for a total of 11 minutes on track. While he was making these ones, I tried to catch him in other points of the track. In fact, I noticed a Ferrari badge located in the background, and I thought it would have been meaningful to take a picture of Hamilton with the branching holes in the frame. During this stint, Lewis pushed a bit more, trying to find the limit lap after lap. A sign of that is given by the fact that he made a little correction at the exit of the hairpin. That may have been due to the low grip available. In fact, the track was not very rubbered in, and the extremely low temperatures of around 5 degrees Celsius didn't help. After a solid stint, the number 44 came back to the garage. At 11:08, Lewis got back on track. At the second lap, he had a big lockup at the entry of turn 6. I didn't catch it at the moment, but from this picture you can notice the smoke generated by it. During this last stint, I made use of the zoom more extensively, reaching up to 600mm, even when it was going through the closest corner, turn 1. And while this was a huge amount of crowd watching, the number 44 returned to the pits, ending his test session. Hamilton's last run has been pretty short. In fact, he stopped at 11:13, just 5 minutes after he left the garage. After that, there's been a break of over half an hour before seeing him again. At first, we were hoping he would have done a few more laps, but after several minutes without movement, we understood that his work in the car of that day was over. However, we still stayed there, hoping he would come out to greet the fans. At one point, we noticed some people in the distance, so we thought that the moment had finally come. But as they got closer, we realized that they were just photographers and video makers. They approached the crowd and used this drone to capture the scene more effectively. After some minutes, they got back to the garage. While we were waiting for Lewis, I caught other details of the crowd. For example, there were umbrellas with the branching horse and some of the Sky Sport team. I spotted also other photographers and many Ferrari flags. During that long period, many people left the bridge, but as you can see from the pictures, there was still a huge number of fans waiting for Lewis. Once some space opened up at the front, I managed to take other pictures of the crowd and of the Ferrari flags from other spots. At 12:30, the photographers and the video makers came back to the track, but this time they stopped at the inside of turn 1. At 12:50, thanks to the long zoom, I started to see some movement in the garage zone. 1 minute later, 2 cars came towards us, stopping at the exit of turn 1. The first one was carrying some Ferrari photographers and video makers, but from the second car, the man we were all waiting for stepped out. It was Lewis Hamilton's very first public appearance in the red suit, and the emotion was incredibly high, both for us and for him. I felt the same shiver I had experienced earlier, when he came out of the pits for the first time. The 7-time world champion greeted the crowd with a beaming smile, and the fans responded with a loud cheer. And this is my favorite photo of the day. I love how Lewis' face is the only one visible through the larger gap between the brancals. It's as if that opening was meant to spotlight him, the true protagonist of the moment. After about 2 minutes spent admiring the fans, Hamilton returned to the black car, which took him back to the garage. At that point, we left the track for our lunch break. By the time we got back, the SF23 was back on track, this time with Charles Leclerc behind the wheel. The Monegasque driver completed his first laps of 2025 in a wet circuit. In fact, it had already started raining around 12 am. However, just as we took our seats back, car number 16 returned to the pits, bringing his session to an end. I gathered, by talking with the people that were there, that he had done 2 stints on full wet, finishing in style with some donuts. At that point, we stayed on the bridge anyway, hoping that Chaz would come out to greet the crowd, just as Lewis had done earlier. And so he did. After about half an hour, just like at the end of the morning, 2 cars left the garage and headed in our direction. As before, the first one carried the photographers and video makers, while the second one brought out the home crowd hero, Charles Leclerc. The Monegasque stayed a couple of minutes longer than the British driver. He came closer to the fans, singing a few autographs and posing for photos with those who asked. Once he returned to the garage, the activity near the circuit was over, so we walked away, heading towards the headquarters. There were a lot of people there, standing in front of the entrance waiting for the drivers. They were probably busy with the team analyzing the data collected, which is why it took them a long time to come out. In fact, when we left, about 2 hours later, around 5:30 p.m., they were still inside. And that's it for this episode. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, which will be about the TPC tests of Bicarb and Sauber held in Imola the following day.